Assignment 1.2 Muscles. Cardiac muscles are involuntary muscles found in the walls of the heart. They are responsible for pumping blood around the body in slow contractions and consist of two types of cells: pacemaker cells, such as the sinoatrial node, and contractile cells. Pacemaker cells make up 1% of the myocardium, while contractile cells make up the other 99%. One-time cardiac muscles are important is in long-distance events, such as the marathon, which requires a consistent supply of blood oxygenating the muscles. Smooth muscles get their energy from aerobic respiration and are found in the walls lining organs, such as the small intestines. Their role is to aid digestion by pushing fluids along the digestive tracts in long, slow contractions. Smooth muscles, which are also present in the eyes to maintain focused vision, are controlled by the autonomic nervous system, which makes them involuntary. Smooth muscles are crucial when digesting slow-release energy, so a long-distance swimmer has sufficient energy to complete a race. Skeletal muscles are located in the appendicular skeleton and enable movement, such as hitting a forehand in tennis. They are controlled by the central nervous system, making them voluntary, except in extreme circumstances. Skeletal muscles are attached to bones via tendons and can work aerobically or anaerobically, or in other words, quickly or slowly. Functions of the muscles. The ability to maintain position over a sturdy base. Stability is provided by skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are controlled by the central nervous system, thus making them and stability voluntary. The rectus abdominis is an example of a skeletal muscle, and this provides stability in a cricket throw. As the fielder goes to throw the ball, the rectus abdominis muscles contract, keeping the body stable and allowing the fielder to aim. Digestion is carried out by smooth involuntary muscles that are controlled by the autonomic nervous system. Digestion allows us to take in nutrients and energy from our food, which is crucial in sports such as rugby, where athletes require continuous, slow-release energy, which can be found in sweet potato, to compete for the 80 minutes. The motion of the body is controlled by the skeletal muscles, which in turn are controlled by the central nervous system. Motion is a voluntary movement and generally includes the appendicular skeleton. During movement, muscles flex to create movement at the joints, such as in a 100-meter sprint, where the bicep femoris flexes to produce movement at the knee joint. Involuntary cardiac muscles in the heart cause circulation as they pump blood from the heart around the body. They are helped by the skeletal muscle pump, which is a collection of skeletal muscles that compress veins and help deoxygenated blood return to the heart. Circulation is especially important in aerobic game sports, such as basketball. 70% of the body's heat comes from energy produced in the muscles. Heat production is important in warm-ups as it decreases the viscosity of the blood, which allows the blood to deliver oxygen to muscles more efficiently. Voluntary skeletal muscles controlled by the CNS are the main producers of heat in the body. Performing knees up before a football match can help improve heat production, and this extra heat makes the muscles more pliable before a game, reducing risk of injury. Muscle anatomy. Skeletal muscles are connected to bones via tendons. They are surrounded by epimysium, a fibrous elastic tissue surrounding the muscle. In the epimysium is the connective tissue called perimysium that contains grouped muscle fibers and blood vessels. The individual muscle fibers are separated by endomysium, which also contains capillaries, but are grouped by fascicle. Smooth muscles lack myofibrils, sarcomeres and striations, creating a smooth microscopic pattern on its surface. They have only a single layer of endomysium, which produce themselves and are shaped with a wide middle in which is situated a single nucleus and tapered ends. The elasticity of a smooth muscle is useful during its long, slow contractions. Cardiac muscles. There are two different types of cardiac muscles: pacemaker cells and contractile cells. Pacemaker cells include the sinoatrial node, which is a small amount of cardiac muscle that uses electrical impulses to automatically regulate the pace and of contractions of the heart. However, contractile cells only make up 1% of the myocardium. The other 99% is made up of contractile cells, which work aerobically. They do not allow tetanus, which is a continuous contraction of the muscles, as this would cause severe respiratory problems and possibly a cardiac arrest. Origin and insertion. The origin is the immovable or slightly movable bone that the muscle is attached to, acting as a base for it to generate movement. An example of the origin is the scapula, which performs this role for the bicep brachii. The insertion is the movable bone the muscle is attached to. An example of an insertion is the radius, which moves when flexing the bicep brachii. Types of muscle fibers. Type 1 muscles are red, slow twitch muscles that use aerobic respiration to harvest energy. Type 1 muscles are best suited to low intensity, very long distance events, including 1500 meter swimming and a marathon. They have a slow contraction speed and high resistance to fatigue. Their aerobic respiration means they break down food slowly and can only exert a low amount of force. Type 2A muscle fibers are fast oxidative glycolytic muscle fibers. This means they can use aerobic respiration to harness energy, or use anaerobic respiration, in which they use glucose to get energy. Fog muscle fibers have a fast contraction speed, as well as a fair resistance to fatigue. As with their energy production, fog muscle fibers can aerobically and anaerobically break down food. As they can apply a moderate amount of force, type 2A muscles are best suited to mid-intensity events such as the 400-meter sprint in athletics. Type 2B muscle fibers are fast glycolytic muscle fibers that create energy anaerobically only, using glycolysis as fuel. Their fast contraction speed and low resistance to fatigue makes them suitable for high-intensity sprints, including sprinting for a loose ball in football. Type 2B muscle fibers use anaerobic metabolism, meaning their white fibers break down food quickly. They can also produce a very high amount of force. During a game of hockey, all muscle fibers are used. For example, the anaerobic movement of a shot uses type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers to generate power. The fact they use glycolysis to provide energy means they are well suited to this explosive activity. Type 2A muscle fibers work at a mid-range intensity, so in hockey this could be putting pressure on an opponent. Their use of aerobic and anaerobic respiration allows the player to maintain a good consistent speed to pressure opponents for a long period of time. Finally, aerobic type 1 muscle fibers help athletes stay in position when they are not on the ball. Their aerobic respiration provides them with a high resistance to fatigue, allowing constant, slow movement to change position in accordance to position of the ball or to create space. Identifying muscle fibers. Fast twitch muscle fibers, such as type 2A and 2B fibers, fatigue faster than slow twitch muscle fibers, including type 1 muscle fibers, as they work anaerobically. However, fast twitch muscle fibers also recover quicker and can exert more power. This means that somebody with a high concentration of fast twitch muscle fibers will have a graph with varied results and frequent spikes. Based on the frequent spikes that can be seen in the results from person 2, we can suggest they have more fast twitch muscle fibers than person 1. This is because person 2's results go up from around 74 to 87 and back down to 69, all in the space of around 10 seconds. These frequent spikes suggest person 2 has predominantly fast twitch muscle fibers. Slow twitch muscle fibers, such as fog muscle fibers, can maintain a high level of work for longer than fast twitch muscle fibers. This is because fog muscle fibers can work anaerobically to reach a high level of intensity, although the fact they also work aerobically prevents them from reaching the level of type 2 muscle fibers. This means someone with many fog muscle fibers will not be able to exert as much force as someone with many type 2 muscle fibers, although thanks to their aerobic metabolism, they will be able to maintain this level for longer. Based on this, I believe person 1 has a high amount of fog muscle fibers, as she reaches 155 after around 5 seconds and maintains this peak power for a further 5 seconds. Types of muscle contraction. Isometric contractions are where the muscle contracts and applies force but doesn't change length, so there is no movement at the joint. This occurs when the body is in the fixed position, such as when performing the crucifix move on the rings in gymnastics or in a rugby scrum. An isotonic contraction is where the muscle contracts and changes length. There are two types of isotonic contraction, eccentric and concentric. An eccentric contraction is where the muscle lengthens as it contracts, such as in the lowering phase of a bicep curl, where the bicep brachii lengthens but is still tensed. A concentric contraction is a contraction where the muscle shortens as it contracts, such as when kicking a football. The bicep femoris contracts and shortens to flex the knee. Isokinetic contractions are contractions that keep the muscles moving at the same speed, irrespective of any change in resistance. They require specialist equipment to produce and are not very common. For example, when on a cycling machine, isokinetic contractions would keep the legs moving at a constant pace, even if they had to work harder to maintain this pace. In the first stage of the motor unit, the sensory neuron detects a stimulus, or the brain sends a message that you want to move to the CNS. Next, the motor neurons send impulses called action potential, carrying information to the muscles. Then, the neuromuscular junction receives these impulses. The neuromuscular junction is a chemical synapsis consisting of axon terminals and a motor plate. Then, a small gap between the junction and the muscle fiber called the synaptic cleft has acetylcholine secreted into it. This is an organic chemical that produces movement if there is enough of it. Finally, if there is enough acetylcholine, the muscle will contract. However, the all or nothing theory states that if there is enough of acetylcholine and action potential, the entire muscle will move. However, if there is not enough of both of these, none of the muscle will move. The attachment of actin and myosin is required for movement to occur, but at rest this is inhibited by the enzymes tropomyosin and troponin. However, as we move, the sarcomere secrete calcium ions, which remove the enzymes and allow the attachment of myosin and actin, thus creating movement. An initial contraction occurs when the myosin moves towards the middle of the sarcomere and pulls both ends together. In order for further contractions to occur, the bond between the myosin and the sarcomere must be broken by energy in order for the myosin to attach to another point in the sarcomere and contract the muscle further. When the muscles return to rest, the sarcomere will stop producing calcium ions and tropomyosin and troponin will again inhibit the attachment of actin and myosin. This process can be compared to rowing, as the connection and disconnection of myosin with the sarcomere relates to the rower dipping his oar in and out of the water. If the rower kept their oar in the water, they would move themselves forward but then push themselves backwards again. This effect would be the same with the sliding filament theory. The energy used to break the bonds between myosin and the sarcomere is known as ATP. ATP is a chemical compound consisting of adenosine and 3 phosphoric molecules. These phosphate bonds are broken down by an enzyme called ATPase, which enables us to use ATP as energy. ATPase also helps catalyze or speed up the supply of energy needed for muscle contraction. Antagonistic pairs are made up of a pair of muscles known as the agonists and antagonists. The agonist is the prime mover, which means it is responsible for decreasing the angle at a joint, while the antagonist is the muscle that relaxes and extends, acting as a brake. For example, when diving off a block in swimming, the gastrocnemius acts as the agonist as it contracts to allow plantar flexion and generate power. At the same time, the tibialis anterior relaxes and acts as a brake to prevent the ankle from hyperextending. The synergists are muscles that help agonists contract, control, and direct movement. They are located either side of the agonist. Fixators stabilize the joint to stop any unwanted movement. They are located around the origin. For example, during a bicep curl, the brachioradialis is the synergist that helps the movement occur, and the deltoid is the fixator, keeping the joint stable.